I started off just taking care of one child who I was just babysitting. I was working like 40-hour weeks, but just taking care of her. They would actually drop her to my home and I would take care of her. That was actually the beginning of mentally my business, because the little girl, I had just become Adventist at the time. And the mom was a single mom and she really needed my help. And so she came to me and she said, Saturday is the day at my job that I work the most. I need to work Saturdays. So can we work something out? And I said, I prayed about it and I was just like, I cannot have you pay me on Saturdays, but I can take your child. The only thing is that I go to church on Saturdays. So she's going to church with me. You don't have to pay me, but the baby's going to be at church. I serve at church. I'm going to be there. And she was like, that's fine. And so I literally was, how old? 19 years old, having this carrier. The baby was 4 months at the time, bringing this carrier to church with me, sitting in the pews with this Caucasian baby. Everybody's like, that's not your child. Like, where did you get this child from? But it was my first step in doing my job, but also incorporating ministry, which at the time I didn't know. She was my first job. I also at the time started working because for some reason I felt like the one child was really easy for me. I'm like, I'm doing great at this. And so I actually found a second family that was willing to drop their child off and didn't mind me taking care of both of them at once. So that was when I started managing two at once. But one of them was going to church with me. And she began going to church with me 4 years. You guys know her as Carly. So that's how Carly started. And it became like from went to a job to meet her, me not even being paid to have her anymore, to me starting to see the light of God open in her eyes and her starting to learn these songs and me dropping her at children's church. And her mom wasn't a Christian, and God using her songs, her singing these children's songs to her mom beginning to be like, like, she's different. Like, what's up? Like, my child is singing these hymns. My child won't eat without praying first. Like, what is going on here? And that was the beginning of what is today, just on a lesser scale. And in that time, I went from taking care of two children that were separate families to then having the experience that my next job was me taking care of twins. And that lady, she was the first, when I say that God put people on our path, they were actually Muslim, I believe. And they respected my Sabbath so much, to the point, like, on Fridays, they were like, Annie, it's 3. Like, I'm rushing home to get you out on time so that you have some space between your Sabbath and this and that. And the
Wow.
mom, who at the time was a doctor, when I had very little confidence at the time. And so when I went and positioned for the job, I think I worked for them about 1.5 years before I was like, you know what, like, I'm starting to do more work for them, et cetera, et cetera. And so I went, if I'm honest, I believe I was making like $10 an hour at the time, a little bit, like a few dollars more than minimum wage. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to ask for 11. I might ask for 12, and then I'm going to ask for, like, she might bring it down to 11, like thinking I'm really doing something. And then the mom, when I sat down and did that with her, she was like, Annie, you do X, Y, and Z for us. You're asking for 12? Like, she was like, think that over and think that over and ask again tomorrow. So I'm like, okay. All right. And so the next day I went to her and I'm like, okay, can I have 15? And she's like, so she sat me down, we're talking, and she's like, Annie, I want you to realize what you bring to the table. Without you, our family is in chaos. You bring stability, you bring just love, you bring control for our children, you discipline them in a loving way, sweetie. So she like talked to me like that, and she said, so you asked for 15, we're gonna actually give you 20. But I want you to realize that this is your avenue. And you need to start, like, I don't know what she said at the time. This was maybe 8 years ago, but she essentially was like, you have the grounds to say with your chest what you want and the cost that you want. And you need to, when these families are petitioning for you, you need to make them realize all that you bring to the table. And she was the first client who, mind you, she definitely could have just taken my little 12. She offered me $8 more than what I was asking, because of the fact that she was the first person to realize, no, not even being a Christian, but like, God is doing something in you in this, because our children are different because of you in their life. And she was the first person to really do that. And so God really just put the right people on my path for me to start realizing my value, for me to start realizing, okay, this isn't just an after school job. God is doing something right in this moment. And I think one of the things that for me was that because I was out of school at that time, maybe 23, 24, no degree, I started getting very insecure about that fact. And, I don't have anything, like I'm not bringing much to the table. I don't have a child development degree, things like that. And so that was where my worth was coming from, because I'm like, God, I don't have this, so I can't ask for this. And that was one of the first families, along with others came along, but one of the first families to make me realize, like, God has purpose for you in this moment. It's not with the degree that the purpose is coming. It's not with you at your ultimate final career that the purpose is coming. God is doing something right here. And because he's in this, you can ask for what you deserve, because you can, because you're his daughter, because you bring value without all the extra stuff. And so that really was one of my formative moments of being like, all right, God, like, I think you're doing something bigger here than what I even think that it is.
Man, powerful, right?
Yeah.
There's a question that I try to ask every guest, right? And the question is, what impact have you had on some individual, right, that has helped you to realize that your business is about more than making money? I don't think I need to ask the question. I don't think I need to ask at this point, right? Because it's clear, right? When you see that something you do, that the child that you're taking care of, you say, the parent is saying, man, what's different about my child, right? And they're realizing, it's the songs, it's the community, it's the, I'm like, wow, that's evidence right in front of you, right, of the impact that you're having. And I love how God, like you say, places people in our path and direction to help us to realize our worth. A lot of times we're tying our worth to different things, right? And it was one course that I took before that had to really retrain my mindset and thought process to say, look, you don't base the value of your product or your service, your gift, right, based on just what you even think, right? Because we many times misunderstand our value. You're saying, man, this is a $12 value. You know what I'm saying? I can push for 12, and yet somebody outside of you is saying you're out of your mind to only ask for $12, right?
Right.
But what is the benefit? What is the blessing that we bring? And this is a lesson that the gospel teaches us, right? The gospel is the most valuable thing in the universe because it solves all the problems of the universe. Amen. And every true business solves a problem, right? And so this family was able to list out to you many problems that your service, right, brought to them in their household. And so then you have to look based on that. Now, what is the value of this service? And what I've come to realize is, in many times when we don't charge what we're worth, it actually does a disservice to other people. It's not just like, oh, I'm disservicing myself. It's like, no, it's also a disservice to other people, because a lot of times when people don't give the value for what they're receiving, a lot of times they start to not see the worth in that thing that they're receiving. And they end up, and it just ends up going away, right? They end up losing it because they never saw the value in it, and it was not placed on the pedestal that it should have been placed on.